ahead.
I mean, we have 53 participants, but obviously that includes people who aren't members. So.
Are you taking names?
Yeah, I count 25 board members, Peter.
I was just about to say, we have 25. And what's the total count on board members?
In or out?
Well, it's not going to be more than 50, so
So we need,
I think we are technically a quorum.
yeah.
Yeah, we just need one more, but we'll quorum.
All right, we might as well at least begin with the people that are the couple of people that are going to speak, so that we can let them go to wherever else they need to go. First of all, welcome. I'm Peter Fleming, the chair of Community Board 6. I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm waiting for an important phone call, so I may have to temporarily drop off, at least from a volume point of view. So if that happens, you know. Or Mike can take over and call on people until I'm able to come back. It shouldn't take me very long. Unfortunately, she was supposed to call 25 minutes ago and didn't. So anyway, we're going to begin first with our two speakers. We're going to hear from Assemblyman Carroll, and then we're going to hear from Anita Scoop from the local school district 15 superintendent, and then we'll go on to our regular business. So Bobby, if you want to start.
Sure. Good evening, Community Board 6. Thank you, Peter. I hope everyone is well and safe. Just two quick things. Before I get to schools, which I think is probably on every single person's mind, I do want to mention that earlier today, the MTA board announced a doomsday budget for 2021, and it really is a doomsday budget. It is 40% cuts in service that have already been cut tremendously of our buses and subways, as well as almost 10,000 layoffs. This would be catastrophic, to say the least. If this were to happen and were to be implemented, the cuts would go into effect this spring, just as the COVID-19 vaccines are supposed to be rolled out, just when we might start be able to really revive our schools, our economy, our lives. This would, I fear, break the back of many New Yorkers and many businesses. This cannot happen. And the only way to stop that is to bring tremendous resources to the MTA. And the way we do that, well, we're going to need them to borrow from the Fed window, which they can do. We're going to need federal assistance, which hopefully is coming either in the HEROES Act or when a Biden administration happens. And we're going to need to do it by raising revenue on the state level, which means raising taxes. And really to fix all of our budget shortfalls, that be on the city level, that be on the state level, or that be for the MTA, we're going to need all three of those. We're going to need federal assistance. We're going to need the state to raise revenue, and we're going to have to figure out how to borrow money and possibly also make some smart cuts. But that's a huge, huge thing. Please reach out to your local assembly member or state senator and your local Congress member. And we have a great congressional delegation here in Brooklyn. I see Dan Wiley from Congresswoman Velasquez's office is on, Congresswoman Clark, who is my congressperson, Congressmember Nadler. We have a whole host of folks, and we of course have Chuck Schumer, who lives in Community Board 6. We need all of them to bring their forces to bear so that we don't have that doomsday scenario. And I just want to bring that to all of your attention, because that may have gotten drowned out by the other big news today, which is, as you may know, our governor and our mayor hate one another and refuse to work together at any moment And because of that, our schools are closing tomorrow. And that is really unfortunate. The second COVID wave is real. And I don't want to pretend that we shouldn't take it very seriously. But it is crazy to me that we are closing our schools first, before we close indoor dining or gyms, before we try every effort to keep this critical resource open that is a lifeline to so many children, so many families, and so many in our community. And so this closure is going into effect. I hope it will be as short as possible because we are able to work as a city and a state to flatten and lower that curve. And so we're able to reopen our schools. But I do want to be clear, right? Our schools had a 0.2% COVID positivity rate out of 140,000 tests. We know from the science that the reason for the uptick is because of people gathering in homes, gathering in restaurants and dining halls and wedding halls and other locations. It was not because of our schools. And so I really wish that our governor and our mayor and others could have worked together to figure out how to make smart closures and smart policies and smart enforcement so that we didn't have to close this most critical resource. And so tomorrow we're going to be putting out, we've already put out some stuff, some really great things from Yale University that have guides for folks to work with their young children at home for literacy and to learn to read, as well as other supports for families who are struggling with remote learning and their children who are struggling with remote learning. But that's all I've got to say now. Happy Thanksgiving. Please be safe. Please try to distance. If anybody has a pressing question, I'd love to try to answer it, but I don't want to monopolize too much time.
Thanks, Bobby. We're pleased that Anita Skop, the District 15 superintendent, was able to join us at the last minute. We appreciate her taking the time to come and tell us what she knows about tomorrow's school closing. So I'm going to introduce her now and thank her again for coming in at the last minute, and just remind her that she has to unmute before she speaks.
Thank you, Peter, for reminding me to unmute. I really do appreciate it. So, first of all, I want to tell you that our schools are prepared. From the get-go, we have always planned for any eventuality because we are concerned. We didn't know in which direction we would go, and as our assembly member said, it is a political decision, and it's based on a decision that is certainly not in my hands. And consequently, what is in my hands is ensuring that our children are going to get the best possible support that they can get, whether they are remote or not. I do want to explain that even when the schools are open, the preponderance of time children are remote. And I think it's very important to understand that they are going to school. Some kids are going to school 5 days a week, and I will explain who. Some kids are going to school 2 days a week. Some kids are going to school 1 day, 1 week, 2 days the next week. All of that is contingent on a number of things. It is contingent upon the very carefully following the CDC rules about social distancing, the number of students and teachers that can be together in a room, and also to ensure that we have sufficient teachers and support for our kids. So those have a real impact. That's why we have cohorts, what we call cohorts of 2 cohorts where the kids go 2 days a week, and 3 cohorts where it's smaller groups. And it depends on the number of kids in a school and the number of kids whose parents have chosen blended learning. So what is going to happen? Well, we've been remote before. We were certainly remote last spring, and we're much better prepared now. Every school has a digital curriculum. It has materials that are online that are ready to go for our students. They have instructional packets that are going home to the students who may have limited technology, and we have been preparing for this for a while. We are also in the process of getting more technology. We had ordered more technology, not me personally, but the Department of Ed had ordered 100,000 Wi-Fi enabled iPads. And as these are trickling in, and they're coming in small pieces, principals and their APs will be going to the schools and distributing them to families as they come in. Ironically, they were supposed to start coming in this week. So, but what are we doing for the kids who don't have technology? One of the things that we're doing is that we are giving them what I'm calling grab and go bags, which are in fact materials, reading books, supplies, that workbooks, things that they can take with them and work on whether they have technology or not. Some of our children who don't have an iPad will literally call in on their mother's phone, but this enables them to be part of the lesson and part of the learning. We have teachers who have prepared wonderful online lessons and wonderful online support, and we are ensuring that they have the supports that they need and that they have put them in place. Most of our schools, virtually all of them, use a platform called Google Classroom, and by now people are much more comfortable with it than they were in the spring. It's not perfect. Nothing is ever perfect. And of course, we want our kids to be with us and to teach them face to face, but we are going to do the best that we can under any circumstance. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Anita?
May
Hang
I ask
on
a
one
question?
second. Sure.
Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Do you have any indication that District 15 schools were a source of community transmission?
I will tell you, I can only give you anecdotal evidence on anything because I don't have data. You'd have to speak to the what's called the situation room or the central office about that. And I can explain what the situation room is. But I will tell you that unfortunately, what I have noticed over the past week and a half to 10 days is that there has been an increasing number of cases called in schools. Unfortunately, two of my schools, whether we close tomorrow or not, were closed for 2 weeks already. PS 29, which I believe is in CB6, and one of my schools in Sunset Park also were closed for 2 weeks already. So this is not done lightly. This is done when there are a serious number of cases in a school. I cannot say to you that we've seen like just enormous numbers, but we've seen a significant rise in the numbers over the past 10 days.
Thank you.
Peter?
Somebody wanted to know on the chat if we have any sense of how many people don't have technology.
I can take a stab at it, but I don't think I can't say to you how accurate I am. Let me look something up. Hold on.
Sure.
Hold on. I come prepared.
And we appreciate that.
It's my pleasure. Okay, one more. Let me see if that's the one I was looking for. As a total across of all of District 15, we have applied for 3,000 pieces of technology, 3,000 iPads. Part of the problem is it's not the iPad, it's the Wi-Fi. We have schools have given out devices that are Chromebooks, as you know, but the families don't have Wi-Fi. And in the initial COVID outbreak, there were companies that were giving out free Wi-Fi. That's not the case anymore. We have, however, at the Department of Education been very graciously given a donation of hotspots, and we've applied for those as well. And so we're in the process of getting those and giving those out. in addition to the iPads that are coming.
Great. Thank you. Bridget, did you have a question?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I'm just gonna, I wanna, thank Anita for her leadership with District 15. It's amazing the amount of work she has put in terms of cleanup and getting the schools ready. And I give her a lot of commendation. I just wanted to just reiterate, and Anita, can you just make sure to chime in? We as a school city, the city as a whole, put in a proposal to the state, and within that proposal, a 3%, if there was a 3% rise in cases of COVID, that caused the shutdown of in-person learning. There is learning remotely. And I just want us to reiterate that remote learning is happening to everybody in the school system. And I'd like if Anita can chime in of what I'm saying.
Absolutely. I'm really happy to talk to that because the teachers are doing a yeoman's job. And I am going to tell you an anecdote, a couple of anecdotes. So I had the privilege today of visiting 4 classrooms across our middle schools. And the classrooms that I visited were remote classrooms. And the learning that was going on there, the ownership of the learning was just extraordinary. If I may describe to you one classroom, which was a 6th grade math classroom, the kids were commenting on the way problems were developed. And it was not the teacher just saying, this is how you do this. The teacher put up 2 different solutions to a problem. By the way, very cute, very engaging for young students. And she said, which one do you think is the better solution? And to listen to those young first-year middle school kids who had adjusted to remote learning, who had adjusted to middle school. Remember, they started middle school in the middle of a pandemic, was extraordinary. They were comfortable, they were engaged. It's not perfect everywhere, but believe me, your children are learning. They're learning every day. Then I went to see a science lesson in another school. And again, they were talking about evolution, and the way the teacher was teaching them to write critical thinking and to take notes was extraordinary and was a skill that they will use throughout their lives in college and high school. Incredible skill. And just the level of the articles. She had an article on evolution and they were breaking into small groups, and she had geared it for 3 different reading levels, but she did not say group A, you're doing the easy level, group B, you're doing the middle level, and group C, you're doing the hard level. She put it out there for all of them. She said, you make the determination. Please, everybody start with article number 2. And if you find that you have a little trouble, you can go to article number 1. Or if you find that you finished it and you'd like a little more challenge, you can go to article number 3. There was absolute student ownership of learning. There was remarkable teaching going on. And then the last one I'm going to talk to you about is a first-year English teacher, again 6th grade, because today I saw 6th grade. And this young woman was teaching them the concept of motif and theme using, initially she had used the 3 pigs. That was part of what they had done. And then today they talked about Moana. And the kids were able to relate to things that they knew to glean a concept. And they were arguing with each other and determining, and then they broke into small groups. And to watch our children in small groups without a teacher, I was a fly on the wall, was remarkable, because I will remember that one little girl, Hazel, was a child who took charge immediately. She was in charge and she was just pushing the group along, and they were working, and it was really fun to see. So I want to give kudos to the teachers. I just finished writing them notes. It's so funny before I came to the meeting, but I also want to say something about the other teachers. There are teachers who are working and who are doing great things and doing more than they should have to do, and they're doing them it willingly and with a kind heart because they care about kids. It isn't that the kids won't get learning. They will get learning. We are making sure that our kids are touched by learning. We have asynchronous curriculums where they can go in, they can read an article, they can respond, they can write. There are little videos that they can watch that are supportive. The kids who do not have Wi-Fi, the kids who do not have devices, are kids who are being supported with materials. The teachers have put together what I called, as I said earlier, grab and go bags. Because truthfully, what I'm concerned about is the families that don't have things in the house that we take for granted, such as crayons or scissors or glue or things like that. And so those are being included. Reading books are being included. We're trying very hard to support everything. I noticed in the chat, somebody asked about food services, and food is going to be provided. So that's something that's going to continue. The food people are coming to the schools and they will provide food. And we're trying our best. You know that I'm trying to be absolutely honest with you. It's not perfect. But I will tell you one last thing that I think is important. Every school in District 15, but across the city, is reaching out to every single child to make sure they're okay. There is nobody who is falling through the cracks. We have families that have been called in other states. I can tell you a very funny story. We have kids who have graduated pre-K 2 years ago, but through some kind of a glitch, they're still on the pre-K roster. And so we've been tracking them down to make sure that they're in school and that we can then take them off the rosters. We would love to all go back to 2019 in September and have our kids 5 days a week. We would love to do that. Everybody wants to do that. We are going to make the best out of a difficult situation, and we are going to prioritize keeping our kids safe. And that's all we can do. So thank you.
Thank you, Anita. I really
Anita,
appreciate you coming on.
I have a question for Anita.
Sure.
Hi, Anita. Thank you for attending tonight. The question
My
is,
pleasure.
is there any direction or sense of direction how long this temporary shutdown will be? And also because it's right before Thanksgiving, so it's gonna go
Yeah.
through the Thanksgiving holiday, but is there
When
any?
the mayor spoke today, he said definitely through Thanksgiving. So that's tomorrow and Friday, which is 2 days, and then 3 days next week, which is 5 days, are definite. I don't know what's going to happen after Thanksgiving. I'm sure we'll find out. He reiterated today, and as did the chancellor, that this is a temporary shutdown. So we just have to wait and see. I know that there are families that have real concerns about the holidays and travel. And that's, I'm sure, something that will be taken into consideration. At the same time, I know that there are people who very much want their children back in school as quickly as possible. And I think most people do. And we are going to do the best we can in all directions. I'm not the chancellor. I'm certainly not the mayor, but what we're going to do is make sure whatever happens, we're going to support our teachers and our kids and our families in the best way that we can. And if I can tell you just one little tiny thing that doesn't really have to do with academics, but has to do with the way people are thinking of things, just so you should know that the food services people are providing Thanksgiving dinners in a frozen form so families can take them home and heat them up, which I think
Great.
is incredible and very
Yay.
kind-hearted. Yeah, so it's a really
Anita,
cool thing.
Anita, just one more question. I'm sorry.
Of course,
The-
no, you can ask as many as you'd like.
Yeah, the school in Sunset Park, I heard a few parents, they had emailed and called. What's the procedure once a school shuts down? Like they were
Okay.
concerned about how do they clean,
Oh,
what happens
yeah.
before?
So
And
first of
are
all,
the parents informed of what the procedure?
absolutely, absolutely. Parents have been informed of the cleaning procedures, but sometimes we've had meetings, the CEC has had meetings, schools have had meetings, we've had the custodians explain, but it's a process. There's special sprays that are used, special chemicals that are used to wipe things down. That's done every night. And when they closed a school, and I want to reiterate what Assemblymember Carroll said, the schools did not have very high rates of students getting infected or teachers getting infected. It is still about this deep cleaning. If you'd like, I can arrange for you to have Joe Lazarus come and talk to you about how it's done, because I'm a novice at this. But they have this spray cleaner, tank cleaner that they wear, that they spray and they wipe it down. Especially, they do all the hard surfaces in the bathrooms. They keep, also schools, when they're open, keep windows open. Yesterday, I got complaints that some of the schools are too cold, and they were now talking, now that we're going into winter weather, that how do you balance keeping the windows somewhat open and keeping the heat going? And there's a protocol for that. So all of those are things that are taken into consideration, because you have to make it accessible and clean. And there are masks in the schools, there are sanitary hand sanitizer. All schools have all of those things, all of them.
Great. We're gonna move on. Thank you very much, Anita, for being here. We appreciate the information. Perhaps the Education Committee can have somebody, come in to talk about the cleaning. That might be something for a future meeting of theirs, and we appreciate that offer. So we're gonna move on. Thank you again, Anita.
It's my pleasure.
Sure. Just for information, we are not sponsoring. That's the wrong word to use. We are facilitating a meeting tomorrow with the Department of City Planning to talk about the so-called public place site. They're going to tell us a little bit about some of their plans, and that is going to be a Zoom meeting that we're facilitating. We are not the sponsors of that meeting. It is not our meeting. City Planning is responsible for the content of that. So please direct any comments or complaints you have about that to them. But
we are Zoom
so
conduits.
Yes, we're a conduit. We're just offering our technology to them because we have it set up and we know how to communicate with everyone. So I encourage you, if you're interested in hearing more about the plans for that site, we will, Mike, maybe you can post in the chat the link as well for people that want to know. But we're just the facilitators and, making it easier for them to be in touch with the people in the community board district. So we are now going to move on to the Elections Committee. Jason, if you're here, if you can just facilitate if there's anybody that wants to make, I believe this is the time for nominations from the floor for officers for 2021. So Jason, whatever you've got to say, please say it.
So I know that 2020 feels like it's about 3 years long, but it has been a year since we elected our exec board. So at last week's meeting, I mentioned that if you were interested in running for the exec board or wanted to nominate somebody, to email Mike. So I'm going to kick now to Mike to see, did we receive any nominations?
We did. It was all for the, thank you, Jason. It was all for the current slate of officers. We received, I think, like 23, something like that, which is Peter as chair, Eric as first vice chair, Jerry Armour at Eric McClure, first vice chair, Jerry Armour as second vice chair, Karen Broughton as board secretary, and Tom Miskell, who I believe is calling in right now, as board treasurer. And this is just like last November meeting. If anyone, so now you'd have to nominate from the floor. If not, by acclamation, our current slate gets next year.
So does anybody have a nomination to make? Either unmute yourself and speak, and this is only board members that can do this, or put it or post it in the chat.
I think we are
Hearing none, then that means we will not have an election in December. The current board has been reelected.
Yeah.
And we'll move on from there. We're going to do the things in a slightly different order because Rachel has to leave, so she is going to give the.
Peter, one sec. I think Joanne Simon just jumped on.
Okay, Joanne, if you want to say
She's on.
something.
I'm not sure. I can't see everybody.
Before we move,
Joanne, are you on?
move on. Remember, you have to unmute.
Oh, and Kavanaugh. Okay.
Okay, Joanne, we're not hearing you, so we're going to move on to State Senator Brian Kavanaugh. And then if you're having any technology problems, just let us know.
Can you hear me? Am I on?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Congratulations to the re-elected among you. I also was recently re-elected, so I share your your enthusiasm about re-upping for another term. I just a few brief updates. I'll just briefly, I know I was here when Bobby Carroll spoke about the situation with the schools. I just want to say that I don't want to be in the business of second guessing our public health authorities and the executive officials that have to make those decisions. There are hard choices, but just to acknowledge that it's a very difficult news for a lot of our families, and we really do have to work to redouble our efforts to make sure that we're supporting students struggling with making remote learning work while they're facing so many other challenges. And it's good to, I know our local district really is working very hard on that, and all of our teachers. But I just wanted to acknowledge that. Another area where we've been working hard to kind of minimize COVID impact, as I think I've spoken with all of you in the past about, is housing. Just an update there. We have one of the main tools we've had at our disposal to minimize the impact of COVID on housing stability has been the eviction moratorium. We had called for a blanket moratorium to be in place, and such a moratorium was in place for much of the pandemic. There is a bit of a loosening of that. The most recent executive order from the governor, combined with the court's interpretation of those, leaves open the possibility of some evictions happening during the pandemic. I think that's a terrible mistake. We've been pushing the governor to clarify and tighten that up. And at the same time, absent that, I really do think it is important for the legislature to step in and make it a complete moratorium. It's just among the many activities that we shouldn't be engaging in during the pandemic is putting people out of their homes against their will, with their families and their possessions. So again, there are still many protections in place. We passed something called the Tenant Safe Harbor Act, which makes it such that rent you are unable to pay during the pandemic because of hardship can never be the basis for an eviction, not just during this period, but really ever, even if you end up with arrears. And we've also been pushing very hard for a rent relief package. We did a small bill for very low income people that has had a sort of modest effect, but we've been looking for, I know Bobby also talked about the need for bailout for the MTA. We also going to need large amounts of money to address the housing situation. We've been looking for about $10 billion from the federal government for that. That's about 100 times the $100 million program that we've already implemented, which was also funded with federal money. But it's an ongoing battle. But short term, really, we do need to make sure the moratorium is put back in place. And I've got legislation to do that, as does my colleague Zelmer Myrie, who has a bill that would accomplish that statutorily as well. A few other items, just briefly, we've been monitoring the Hicks Street project, the retaining wall, and we've had lots of complaints, including some complaints from the local school, and we've been working on monitoring the noise as it affects the school, as well as people who live in proximity. Obviously, with the school closing down, the immediate effect of that might be minimized, but we are trying to make sure that that project, is not unduly burdensome. And we had gotten some assurances from the DOT about noise monitoring and mitigation, and some of that didn't seem to have the intended effect. So we're continuing to monitor the situation and push for that. Broader, that's part of the BQE effort. Joanne Simon, I hope she does get on and you can hear from her directly. But we've been pushing for a couple of bills on that. One is to give the city the power to do a real overweight truck enforcement on that. A lot of the need for the renovations of the BQE come from excessive weight heavy trucks, and it's very difficult to enforce. So we're trying to authorize the city to do a sort of modern in motion enforcement system that will allow them effectively to weigh the trucks with sensors embedded in the roadway and issue fines. We're hoping as soon as we're back in legislature that we can get that passed and the city can get that program up and running. We've also, longer term looking for a broader kind of authority to address the huge construction needs along that entire corridor. Just brief little piece of good news, and I see Dan Wiley and I think some of our other folks from congressional offices here, but it is good news that it's been announced that the split tolling in the Verrazano is going to take effect on December 1st. That will prevent lots of traffic from being driven unnecessarily up the BQE and across Manhattan. So it's great for congestion and the environment and traffic, and also the maintenance of our roadways. And it's been long coming, but that's a little minor piece of good news at a very tough time. It's significant in its own right, but relative to the global pandemic we're facing, obviously, we understand that it's a hard time to be thinking about the positive. I think I'll stop there. We are continuing to work to make sure to do what we can to contain COVID. We do continue to distribute PPE, masks, and sanitizer and other materials to people as needed. So if there are organizations that you know of that need those, we are happy to try to provide those things. I'm happy to take questions. I know you have a busy agenda, but if you want to have me take questions, I'm certainly happy to do it.
Anyone? Okay, great. I think Joanne Simon has now joined us. So Joanne, if you want to say a few words, that'd be fine. Remember to unmute, please.
Thank you. I will do that. I was apparently signed in under my staff member's name, and so they didn't know it was me. So thank you, Brian. And yes, we are working on the truck weight issue, which has direct implications for the triple cantilever. But as you know, what happens there ends up backing up into the trench, and very much is an issue for CB6 as well as CB2. And we're trying to move that. I had delusions that we might go back into session this fall. We have not been told that won't happen, but we really don't know whether it will. And that was something that I was trying to get passed if possible this year, because it really does impact the roadway. And it's the truck weights are a problem, but the speed is a problem when we had less traffic because of reduced traffic because of COVID. So all in all, we need to do it. I expect that we will go back into session in January. If we're not back in November, December, which November is pretty much gone now, that we'll go back into session in January, and it will be an interesting beginning of session. I'm not quite sure how that will happen, but I think that it's pretty clear that we'll be working remotely more than not this legislative session, and it'll be, we'll be reporting back on how that goes. A couple of things locally, obviously, the sort of number of people out there at the Gowanus dredging, where we actually are doing the beginnings of dredging the main channel of the Gowanus Canal, and a lot of thanks are due to the Congresswoman who really led that fight, to the EPA, which has created this community advisory group process and supported it all along. It really is the largest and most engaged community advisory group for a Superfund project in the entire country. And that is really a testament to all the community members and organizations that have consistently stayed with that CAG process through some difficult times and some confusing times, and really required everybody to learn an awful lot. And, I am just very proud of all the community members that have really worked so hard and been so engaged in that community advisory group process, and who are showing no signs of letting up. I'm confident that our community will continue to be at the table and engaging in a very robust way with the EPA through this process. And so it was a really nice thing to be at the other day. And I'm just, I can't believe we're there. It's been 10 years. We're actually there. It'll be longer. But we're much farther along than many of us ever anticipated, and even throughout COVID and through changes of administration. So that's a good thing. Recently, I was out at New York Presbyterian Methodist with NYSNA, the New York nurses, and some Brad and Bobby and the borough president, to really call on them to reopen psych beds. One of the things we're finding as a result of COVID is that hospitals are relocating their psych beds, sometimes to, Westchester, for example. We don't have enough psych beds. Certainly through the a major crisis, we needed many more COVID units. And while we are seeing an uptick, we are finding that there are advances in treatment, but people, who need psychiatric care are those people who are going to end up on the street. They're going to end up sick with COVID. And COVID is causing so much emotional distress. And so what we really need are more beds, not fewer. And as you know, there were 50 beds at Methodist, which they say they are bringing back, and we are encouraging them very strongly to bring them back sooner than later. I also want to just mention that one of the bills I have is a hospital closure bill, which would really revamp how it is that a hospital could close or close certain departments. And it would require really specific, and very specific requirements for community engagement in assessing what that community need is for their hospital. Because too often what we see is the hospital makes a proposal to the state, and the state really doesn't engage in any way. And we could be, this is what happened at Litch when they tried to kill the maternity department and pediatrics. Those are often the first to go, but psych beds are also departments that, hospitals feel they can eliminate. And so we don't want that to happen in the future. So I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to get it passed, because, we're seeing more and more, particularly as we go through this pandemic, the need for our healthcare facilities to be at the ready and to be serving the people based on the needs that they actually have. I just want to thank Superintendent Scott for her presentation, which was, very hopeful. I share many of the concerns that people have with regard to the schools and the rate of infection that our schools are showing. I really am one of those people who believe that we should have, number one, started with our youngest kids and our kids with disabilities as we reopen the schools, and that we really should be targeting these closures much more specifically. I'm not happy that the schools are now closing because of an overall infection rate, when our schools have been the safest places for our kids to be, as it's turned out. So, that's a decision that the mayor has made, and everybody will be, following that. But I am concerned about it, and that's about it. Unless people have specific questions, I don't want to babble on for too long. But I do want to wish everybody a very happy Thanksgiving and a very safe Thanksgiving. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Joanne. We appreciate it. Again, I think we're going to go out of order, and we're going to take Rachel from permits and licenses, because she has to leave us a little bit early. So we're going to ask her to make a report on her motion.
All right. Thank you. So we had one applicant at our meeting last month. We did have quorum, and it is for Terrace Restaurant BK. It was up for a second.
Just a second, I'm having a little difficulty.
No, it's okay. It was there. Well, it's going to be, it's where the Blue Ribbon restaurant was, next to Calexico on 5th Avenue between Garfield and First Street. They're going to be a sort of they call themselves a diner continental restaurant. This is a owner that has a lot of experience with restaurants. They also operate Grand Canyon Bistro, which is at 300 Skirmahorn, and another restaurant in on 3rd Avenue, 3rd Avenue somewhere in Brooklyn as well. So this is going to be their 3rd restaurant that they are going to operate. So they have experience with restaurants, and they want to open here. We had no real issues with their application. They had done all the proper notifications and postings, and the motion was unanimously approved.
So I guess we have an opportunity for anybody to make comments if they wish, either by posting them in the chat or unmuting yourself and speaking. Members only again, please. Okay, hearing none. What I'm going to ask is that I'm going to presume that you're in favor of this motion unless you indicate in the chat that you are not, and then we'll count the no's, just to make it a little bit simpler. So again, if you are against this motion, please post so in the chat, and we will mark you down as no. Anyone? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Rachel. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
We're going to move on to the district manager's report.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Peter. I'll be pretty brief because I think most of the people here have probably already heard from me today and every day for a while. If you want to keep hearing from me, I'll tell you, you can text BKCB6 to 22828. You will receive our daily newsletter. One thing I just wanted to say in the Zoom era we're in, that, and I've gotten a few questions about this, that I do share the videos after, and I'll share it in the chat after this. Our meetings are recorded and uploaded on our YouTube page. So I know there's been more interest for whatever reason, I guess due to being locked in, that people want to see the meetings and things like that. They are on our YouTube page and also on our archive calendar page. I mean, I'm happy to direct people, but it's just something I've noticed a lot of lately. And it's all there and recorded, and you can relive the magic that is CB6. And if you have any questions, or if you have a community issue that you want me to include in that, feel free to email me at mike@bkcb6.org, and I'll do my best to include it. And I guess I'll see you later on tonight or next month
on the radio.
There you go.
So November is the time when we traditionally do our community budget priorities for the next fiscal year. The city has made some substantial changes in that process, and I'm happy to say that they are incredibly more involved in it than they have been in the past. So hopefully our list will become more responsive of what the community needs, and that there's also a good chance that it will be more representative of what our needs are. So We're going to start by hearing from Ty, who I want to thank for being so actively involved in the meetings with the city on this. You know, we're going to hear from him, and then he'll pass it off to Rick Lufglass, but we're going to start out by hearing from Ty.
Hey, everybody. I have a few quick comments I want to make about what this process looks like, but first, I should apologize for my newly stitched up appearance. I had a little run-in with a dumbbell while working out this weekend. But luckily, the Methodist DR assured me I don't have a concussion, so everything I'm about to say should make sense. Every year, we review a list of capital and expense budget priorities, like Peter said. It's a charter-mandated process that all 59 community boards participate in. Some do it really well and some don't. And our board, like many others, falls in the latter category according to DCP for various reasons that go back a long time. So we've been working over the last few months to transform this process from our typical way of doing this, which is basically Rick Lufglass, God love him, stands in front of all of you and introduces you to a long list of items for the first time and asks you for a yes vote. And we want to turn this into an ongoing proactive review from a small working group made up of board members. And this working group's short-term goals have been to reassess the most previous of the board's submissions, remove some items that have been funded in previous budgets, and some that are no longer feasible according to agency responses, and add items that address other needs. And this year we had obviously an eye toward the specific moment that we're living in. And I feel confident that this group did that. And I want to thank Rick Lufglass, Eric McClure, Angelica Ramdari, Michaela Bowderston, Jason Reichel, and Samara Trilling for their work on this over the last month or so, over a number of Zoom conferences and phone calls and emails. The medium and long-term goals of this working group are to review and assess the agency's responses, decide if there's more action to be taken on our end, keep an eye on the list throughout the year and adjust them accordingly, establish a way to receive feedback and suggestions from the community at large, and report back to appropriate committees, the board chair, and the full board when necessary. And we want this to be a working group so that its door remains open to any board member who is interested at any time. And if you have thoughts about the particular list we presented this year or in years past, really the best place for you to express those is in the Zooms and meetings and phone calls that we'll be having probably quarterly or as needed should something come up. And the point of all this that we're doing is to turn this process into a living document that doesn't just express the board's opinion on priorities, but proactively advances those priorities to the best of its ability. So it's true that tonight, hopefully for the last time, we're asking Rick to present to you a list of items you haven't really thought much about or had time to consider. And I hope you vote yes on them because this group worked pretty hard and very quickly on them. And really, the real work that needs done around this is not a casual debate about rankings tonight, but an ongoing process at the working group level. And if you're interested in this ongoing process and what we're trying to establish and build, I'm asking you to email me, ty@bkcb6.org, and I'll loop you into everything we're doing. And moving forward, this will be something that is a little more regular part of what the board does and runs a little more in parallel with the board's typical business. So I guess if Peter will allow, now we'll just go to Rick to talk about the highlights of this year's list.
Yes, Rick, please go ahead.
Terrific. Well, I do want to give a huge shout out to Ty, who has been incredible in this process in terms of fact finding, identifying other materials and ways to prioritize. So, but just to kind of put a little bit of context, because you have seen these lists in the past, but we need to back up into a planning document. And just so people understand, there typically are three primary parts of the city budget. There's the revenue budget, which is how do we, where does the money come from? And obviously right now, that's where a lot of the strains are. Two is where does the money go? And that involves
both long-term physical infrastructure, that's all under the capital budget. And then people tend to think expense, when they hear about city budget, they think about the expense budgets. You hear about the deficit, you hear about the cuts. So we're asking, so we're always asked to input on the expense and capital budgets. As Ty explained, it's a year-round process. We are right now submitting for fiscal year 2022 because right now we're in fiscal 2021, which ends June 30th. And so the review here is from July 1st, 2021 till June 30th, 2022. Sort of the way things kind of carried out this year, because we are in a very unique moment of time. As Ty said, we were able to excise some stuff that was no longer relevant or timely or had been done in the past. And I would sort of bucket those that we put forward into 4 primary categories. One is the ongoing needs that we have seen that have not been addressed. Things like every year we ask for more handicap access to the subway, to the elevated lines, as well as Grand Army Plaza and 7th. And obviously this year we're not going to be getting those just given the MTA budget, but we have to keep pushing. Second is what happens environmentally. And so right now, obviously COVID, not just in terms of health impacts, but in terms of employment and education impacts. Third are issues that arise during the course of the year. And you'll see some here like 457 trees have been removed from nature property by FEMA because of construction efforts. So let's, we have to address some of those sort of immediate needs. And the other thing I just really want to implore this community board and raise your sensitivity to is we are one of the wealthiest community boards in the city. We know that. We have among the lowest unemployment rates. We have among the highest educational attainment rates. But if you look at medians, you're absolutely undermining many populations in the community who are not in such fortunate situations. So for example, our median income is $150,000, but around Gowanus houses, it's $35,000, and at Red Hook houses, it's $13,000. So we're very, very focused on what are the disparities in the district and how do we ensure that services are being provided to those who need it most. And that falls into various categories. So with that preface, I'm going to zoom through a few examples. We'd be here all night if you wanted to talk about every one. I'll just give you a sort of a high level on a few of the highlights. Several of these do have to do with COVID. And so you'll see a request for mobile and pop-up testing for not just this year, but in the future. We know that peaks are going to require even more active and flexible testing. We only have one hospital in our district, New York Presbyterian Methodist. A lot of the other districts are doing testing through the New York City Health and Hospitals, which is the public hospital system, and the community health centers. We don't have those, so we need that flexibility of mobile and pop-up testing, which can also then be deployed for vaccinations, not just COVID related, but seasonal flu, et cetera. You'll also see an area around, and this came up earlier, ventilation around the schools, which has to be done very carefully, as we know, because of seasonality. You will see one around the tech, which often we hear, oh, kids are getting the hotspots and the iPads. there are still a lot of disparities there, and I think as a community board, we need to keep pressing on that and supporting the DOE in terms of their being able to access the resources they need. We also put a significant focus on employment-related activities. We know in the past we've very much emphasized sort of the economic aspects of the neighborhood, whether it's commercial corridors or the industrial zones. And what we've really tried to do is look not just at the job needs or commercial needs, but also the employment needs, sort of the flip side. Who has access to positions? We don't have a workforce center in our district, so it's very hard for people from Red Hook to access workforce training programs. So a lot of our priorities fall into those sort of buckets. So all of these also align with our desires around the Gowanus rezoning, be it around the economic aspects, be it around the housing, be it around infrastructure and resiliency. So there are themes that cut across, but at the same time, we have to be careful that not everything is in the Gowanus when you're talking about the geography of the district. So we have to look at needs, for example, in Red Hook and stretching across. So that's kind of my whole structure. I guess I would just open it up to if you have questions about individual ones, but I would implore you not to worry about what's number 3 and what's number 6 and what's number 12. Just really sort of identify if there are issues or concerns or questions.
Peter had to step out to take a phone call. So as vice chair, I will step into his shoes, but Rick, I will let you conduct any discussion and recognize people. So if you have a question, folks, just, I see Jerry has his hand up for starters. Jerry, you're muted.
Okay. Sorry about that. Rick, my usual bad habit took effect and I read the document. And I'd like to congratulate you and everybody else who worked on it. You're right. It's comprehensive and it's finally looking at things a little differently as far as the disparities are concerned. And I think we have to continue on that route. And I think that you guys did a terrific job. Yeah, we can nitpick and move stuff from 5 to 7 and 7 to 3. And in the great scheme of things, I think that we support some of these items is more important than actually what order they're in. So again, thank you. And I do support the report as it was given to us a couple of days ago to read. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment to make?
I do. It's Joanna. I also thought it was really thorough and really reflective of our values as a community, which is great. I did want to highlight that some of the NYPD items and the fact that just the language in some of those line items doesn't seem to reflect what happened this summer and the discussions that have been happening citywide about NYPD funding. And I just wanted to make sure that we take that into account in our asks. I think one of them refers to 9/11 and staffing issues. Just to keep that high in our mind.
Peter, do you mind if I comment on that? Because we did talk about this a lot in the work.
Yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. Please say something. And, I mean, if it's possible to just take a quick look at it to make sure that there is no outdated language, that would be good. But sure, go ahead.
Yeah, Joanne, I really appreciate that feedback. That was something we really wanted to take seriously. Unfortunately, the way we pulled this together left us with really only a few days to rewrite as many of these as we could. I still have to do the formal submission. So if you want to send me some kind of verbiage change on some of these, please do, and we'll incorporate it.
Also in that regard, we shifted some of the, and there might be some legacy language. Sorry, can you hear me? I'm getting echo. Um, Away from sort of traditional policing and more the NCO model, the neighborhood coordination officer model, and very much would like to see, and I don't think we've effectively articulated it, what are the services that mitigate, so for example, mental health services rather than the form of policing that sends in emergency police when people are experiencing a crisis. So those are things that I think we'd like to deal with. But you're right, 9/11 is obsolete. The world is very different. But we have found programs like the neighborhood coordinating officers are a much better sort of relationship model that moves away from the historic stop and frisk and all of the other crises that fortunately people are becoming much more aware of. Other questions?
Rick, I just would want to add one thing on that. Speaking to Joanna's point, and I think I totally hear her on that. And also, as Ty was talking about, as we're talking about this being a continual process, I know, I think going into fiscal year 2020, and I'm not sure if he's here, I'm not looking at the whole list, Glenn Kelly brought to our attention the New Yorkers for Parks letter, and that was closer to the actual budget negotiations. And I know, I think, I don't want to assign action to Joanna here, but I think, if I recall correctly, I remember sending Joanna our resolution in support of additional money in the parks budget to match, I think it was like 95% of expense and $95 million in expanded capital and expense budgets and things like that. So like along with this list, I think we're going to be chiming in more regularly like that and submitting testimony and those sorts of things that I know, that's what I'm hopeful for. I know Ty and Rick and I have had discussions, and I know I've spoken to Ty a lot about that. That's just my point, that would be the kind of thing where if anyone that jumps in, we can advocate for a cause in that way.
Yeah. And this committee should embrace that. The year-round process involves not just these submissions, but once the proposals start coming back from the mayor's office and city council, there are opportunities for hearings and for responses, and that typically happens between February and April, and then they start making the sausage and the like. So that's where we would very much appreciate opportunities to have members of the community testify on issues that are important, that are or are not addressed within the broader budget. So we would welcome people from that perspective, not just let's put the list together. So thank you. Yeah, Ariel. Ariel and then Judith.
I think this was mentioned initially in the introduction, but this is tied to the statement of need. Is it not a statement or a mission statement of need for the district, for the community board? Right?
Well, yeah, this is the priorities that flow from the statement of needs. So several documents are presented. One is the statement of need, which is mostly data based and descriptive. And then the key priorities. We have three most pressing issues around housing, economic opportunity, and resiliency and infrastructure. This is what flows out of that. So you're only seeing sort of the final product document,
so I was
but
going
it
to
all
say,
comes out of context.
So it would be nice to get all of that so we can look at that, and the statement of need for the community board 6 doesn't have to just be data. It could be, like you take the data and then you make a case around why. So then all these pieces that are nicely described, we can see how they're doing against our overall need, as opposed to them being discrete little packages. And that's what I would think would be helpful for us to make that judgment. So maybe we could, that would be a nice, we had talked about this, I think a year or two ago, about working on that statement of need, so that it would be easier to then flesh out these pieces. And so that would be something I'd be interested in working on. And I'd like to see where, I don't know if it did make any progress and, you know, along with this, if the statement.
We made progress, but it started late, and so we will very much value participation for the next year. And the full, for this year, all of those documents will be available on the CB6 website. So not just this final list, but the community needs statement and the sort of what are identified as the pressing priorities by area. So there will be the chance to use that to inform future refinements. I appreciate the input here because frankly, I feel like I've been kind of hanging out on my own with like, you know, lists. And so having Ty put this level of effort into it and sophistication, and having the committee, people like Samara and Angelica and Jason and others who've really been kind of a very active part of the process and just stepping into the breach.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. In addition to what Ty talked about with sort of making sure that this is a more open process for the board, it's been great working with both of you, and I really look forward to having a process where we can have more community input from non-board members, but community members, so that we have a process for submitting potential new items for, you know, if people look into the future 2 years and think what they might want, that there's a place for us to collate those so that we don't have to sort of do this as a scramble in the year, but we have sort of a backlog of potential items to consider. And Ariel, to your point, with data to support that, so we can make a really great case to the city.
Judith, you have your hand open. Up.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very concerned that the children who are at risk in our district, some of them who are living in the Red Hook and Gowanus houses especially, but other children also who need additional tutoring now that the schools are going to be closed. Can there be funds? I noticed that your first item was daycare. Could you also modify that to also add tutoring for at-risk children? Or maybe we could even have a program where there could be a volunteer program where you could virtually match people who could tutor with people who need tutoring. Senior citizens and older people especially, I think, would welcome the opportunity to help others, and also kids who need help could receive individual attention. I just think it would be a great idea.
I think that would be great. I don't know if this is the process. I think it would be helpful to identify what services are being offered within the district already through community-based organizations, and then what the gaps are. The specific needs around daycare came out of and this also relates to tech, but came out of the fact that with parents working at home, kids being at home, adults, you know, being restricted from jobs, that there were particular needs. The data actually says that our district has a disproportionate number of kids from 0 to 5. And so that's why daycare itself became kind of a key priority. I would think that within the context of the tech discussion, which is digital equity, I don't want to just say it's about hardware. You know, it is around use, it's around teaching, it's around technical mentoring, it is around Wi-Fi. So that may be another place to think about it. But I would very much, I mean, to that point, I guess I would love to hear some fact finding, if possible, around what services are being offered, so that we can make sure that people in the district know where to go, what to do, and what the gaps are.
And maybe those things that are offering services could receive additional or some sort of grant from the city or something to assist them, because we have tremendous need now to help children who aren't really receiving the help that they would otherwise get.
Yeah, maybe Ty and Samara, you know, as you're working on the final submission, maybe we can see if there's a way to incorporate that in some way. I'm not exactly sure what, but once we go through it, we can probably figure out a way to do that.
Thank you.
And it definitely becomes a point of advocacy over time. Some of this is budget and some of it is policy advocacy.
Any other comments? We do need to move on. So, Bob, you have to unmute.
Typically, in the past, we've never really dealt with the Board of Ed itself. We've always felt that that wasn't part of the city budget system. They don't come to our budgeted hearings, and it's never been. So I just wondered, is there a change in that before we add something to the Board of Ed or to the budget line that is Board of Ed? I don't remember the specific reason, but we've always not put it in and always been told that we don't deal with it.
Yeah, no, actually, we have put it in the past, but typically with programs like Compass, which is the after-school program, so rather than sort of school day programs, the Department of Ed has not been as active in the budget process. Some agencies are more involved, some less so. Like Housing and Preservation has not typically been involved. There has been an effort at the borough council level to get more of the agencies involved, but we have had DOE in the past.
Sorry then.
Great. Anyone else? Okay, I presume we need to vote on this?
Yeah, we do. We do need an up and down vote on this.
Okay, so again, I'll ask that if you are not in favor of this as it's been presented, or if you wish to abstain, that you note that in the chat, and we'll count those up. Otherwise, we're going to presume that you're in favor of it, just to sort of make this a little less unwieldy.
You know my vote.
So seeing that nobody posted in the chat, we're going to presume that this is approved. And again, I thank Rick and Ty and the committee for all of their great work. And I'm encouraged by the fact that the city has been so instructive in terms of trying to reform our approach, so that, you know, perhaps we can actually be asking for things that we have a chance of getting. So, you know, that's the good news. We're going to move on to landmarks, and I believe that David has a motion for us.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Ty, do you want to throw up the drawings?
Yeah, I'm going to put them up right now.
519 2nd Street. Okay, can you go to the next sheet? Okay, just stay here for a second. So what the applicant was proposing is to actually lower the courtyard, the entrance courtyard there at the lower level slightly, just to facilitate a more accessible approach to the entrance underneath the stoop. And can you go to the next slide? And you can see what was being proposed here on the bottom. The top is the existing condition, where it says right elevation, but the bottom is the proposed condition. Go to the next slide. This is the courtyard as it exists to the what's technically called the basement level on the upper left and upper right. And I'm not sure why he had demolition labeled, since something had been demolished yet, but there's the same photos top and bottom.
Will they be removing the weeds, do you think?
Hopefully. We felt that was outside our purview. Keep going, Ty, the next drawing. So this is a plan. The drawings were a little bit unorganized, sorry, but he's just showing the area there where the hatch door is going to be removed and be replaced, and the step into the courtyard, the step up is going to be removed. And go to the next slide, Ty. There's actually, on the upper right proposed basement plan, there's a new step being added at the bottom of the stoop. You can sort of see that right where the word, right above where it says up on the proposed basement plan. And you can see the hatch there is also smaller than what was existing. And he's putting in a trench drain right where the door is, just above where Ty's circling right now, just to handle any water. So there's no longer a step down to that door. It'll be at that level. Go to the next drawing, Ty. Okay, so this shows the new concrete step at the bottom of the stoop. That's in detail A16 at the bottom of the sheet. And you can see in the photo there is where they had done something similar at 525 2nd Street. And go to the next slide. Okay, so these are just photos of buildings, except for 519, which is the upper right, that are nearby. I think they were really for context more than anything, since none of them really represent the same condition except 525. But 525 is a good one to look at in the lower right, where there's a bluestone paving in the courtyard. It's at grade, and there's the extra step. Go to the next. Okay, so here he's showing the pattern of bluestone paving. And are there more drawings, Ty? Okay, some more details. Go to the next.
That's it. That's the last slide.
Okay, okay. So can we go back a couple maybe? Well, so, keep going back. This is sort of a hard presentation to deal with, but I'll go back one more. I'm looking for the existing photo so I can explain everything in one. Okay, you can stay here. So we essentially did not object to the proposal, but we made a motion with recommendations to adjust the proposal more to our liking, and they were the following. First of all, he wanted to paint the new hatch to be unpainted aluminum, and we said he should paint it black. Second was that the new step at the bottom of the stoop would be tinted to match the rest of the stoop stairs. He had just called it out as sort of rough concrete, and although it's hard to tell there, we just wanted to make sure it matched the rest of the stoop in the same color. The third was that underneath the window that you see in the upper left photo, that's straight ahead, there's going to be a new exposed sort of what I would call a water table at the bottom of the building. And we decided, bring my notes up here again, sorry, that that would be finished to match the brownstone. And then on the right with the neighbor's stoop, which is a lighter gray color, that's also going to be exposed. And we said to finish the bottom of that so it matches that stoop wall. And the final thing was that his paving was just adjusted slightly so it aligned with the entrance into the courtyard. If you go to the paving pattern, Ty. Yeah, so if you look at you can look at either drawing, but the paving pattern, it just didn't quite line up with the opening. And so we asked him to make the pavers a little bit bigger. So it did line up with the opening, and it's just a little bit more of an elegant look. And so you can have those little small pieces of bluestone, say right at the bottom of the new step. And we did have quorum, and it was unanimous. And so we put that to the community board to vote on.
Thank you, David. Any comments on this? You're gonna have to speak up because I'm only looking.
I thought we wanted larger pavers in general rather than these small tiles.
Yeah, I think that's what I just said. We were increasing. We asked them to increase the size of the pavers. So You can see the opening into the courtyard is 3 feet 8 inches wide. So we asked them to increase the width of the paver, so they were 3 feet 8.
Okay, I know Jerry Armour, I thought, had suggested a specific size, but I don't remember what that was.
I don't think we got too specific. It was just really more of alignment, but I don't know, Jerry, I don't.
Oh, we just asked them to match it up with size so that it didn't look like, it didn't look too modern. It blended in much better with the building itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other comments from anyone? Hearing none, I'm going to again ask that if you have any objections to this, that you post your objection in the chat and we'll count those up. Otherwise, we're going to presume that you're voting in favor of this. Hearing none, we're going to say that it's passed unanimously. Thank you very much, David. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have a couple of motions from transportation. So Eric.
Thanks, Peter. So the first up is a motion in support of Resilient Red Hook's resolution asking for Van Brunt Street to be removed from the New York City truck route map. Resilient Red Hook is co-chaired by our colleague Hildegard Link. Ty, that's the, I can do this one first, that's fine. Let's do this while it's up. So this is actually the second one on the agenda. It's a motion to approve an application for expanded curb cuts at Beard Street between Richards and Reed to facilitate the use of emergency vehicles. And those are actually, those emergency vehicles are Verizon vehicles. This is will be a Verizon facility. And the issue here is that it will be a facility where they stock replacement poles, the really long telephone poles. And so in order to be able to get those in and out of this facility safely, they need to expand the curb cuts, which are the kind of a difficult drawing to look at, but if you look at the left side of what you see on your screen, there are lines going in and out. Those are the routes of egress and ingress. So in order to be able to navigate these trucks, and in the bottom right of the diagram, it's hard to see, but there's an example of the truck with the pole trailer behind it. In order to be able to safely get in and out of this facility, they need to expand the curb cuts in and out. And in order to be able to navigate those, they need to remove parking from the opposite side of Beard Street. That's the side of Beard that's along the water. In total, the plan is to remove about 10 parking spaces. Current regulations are overnight bans 2 nights a week from midnight to 3 a.m. Otherwise, it's alternate side parking. So, and a total of about 190 feet of curb space where they need to take the parking away. So that's the motion. We had a quorum and approved it unanimously with Leroy abstaining as a DOT employee.
Great. Does anyone have any comments on this? Hearing none, we're going, Bob, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Most of Brooklyn, the work is underground, the Con Ed is underground. Red Hook does have them above, so I can understand the need, and therefore it probably should be there. But is most of their out above street wiring in Brooklyn, the rest of what's in Brooklyn, is that nearby? Is that more in South Brooklyn, in Green Park or another area? Did any of that get looked at?
Bob, we didn't discuss that specifically. It's a very good question. I think the reason for locating this facility in Red Hook is because of the overhead wires in Red Hook. I'm not sure if this facility is intended to serve other parts of the borough or not.
Definitely is needed in that neighborhood.
Yeah. Leroy, do you know anything different than that?
No, I believe actually, I think they will be
servicing other parts of the city. It's good that it is in Red Hook, like you said, Bob, because we have overhead out in Red Hook. But they will be servicing other parts of the city.
And one other question in that, how is it coming there? Are those coming in off of the canal or?
Trucks.
Just trucks are being brought in there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That will get to our second item on the agenda. So,
Bob, just to answer your question, once you leave downtown and Park Slope, you'll find that about 70% of Brooklyn has their wires, especially through residential areas, on poles. If you go through the streets in Midwood, you go out to Sheepshead Bay and Flatbush, you'll see a lot of poles. So it's not just for Red Hook, the size of the, and what they said, the size of the facility is for all of Brooklyn.
I just wondered. Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Any other comments? Hearing none, again, if you have any objections to this proposal, I ask you to please post your objection in the chat and we'll count that up. Otherwise, we're going to presume that you're in favor of this motion.
Peter, I need to abstain.
Okay.
Just for the
David
record.
is abstaining. And I presume Leroy is as well. Okay. Motion passes. Eric, your second motion, please.
thanks, Peter. So back to the second motion, that is to support a resilient Red Hook resolution asking for Van Brunt Street to be removed from New York City's truck route map. As I mentioned before, Hildegard Link, our colleague on the board, is the chair of, and I see Hildegard here, is the chair of Resilient Red Hook. They have been grappling with this issue of truck traffic on Van Brunt Street for some time, and approached the board with a request of a letter of support to their resolution, which asked the Department of Transportation to remove the designation of Van Brunt as a truck route. The issue of trucks on Van Brunt is multifaceted. As you guys all know, it's the route of the B61. It's a shared bike route. It's the principal retail strip in Red Hook. It's narrow in two ways, so having an abundance of truck traffic there is a concern. It also becomes a greater issue as Red Hook is the proposed site of a number of future last mile delivery facilities. UPS is building a facility on the waterfront on Ferris Street, which will be several 100,000 square feet. There are plans for an Amazon facility on the southern end of Red Hook and two other last mile warehouse facilities in the Hopper. We have asked the Department of Transportation to perform a comprehensive truck study for Red Hook. That hasn't happened yet. But given the location of the UPS facility on Ferris Street, it would be accessible along the waterfront by entering and leaving through the container port facility. Jerry pointed out when we had our meeting that several years ago, the board, before my time, actually, I believe, passed a resolution asking the EDC and Port Authority to allow truck access in and out of the container port facility, which is what the Resilient Red Hook folks have proposed as an alternative. So we had some lively discussion about the proposal, but we passed a resolution unanimously with Leroy again abstaining as a DOT employee in favor of their request to send a letter of support. We also included in that in the resolution a reiteration of our previous motion from several years ago to ask for access through the container port, and also would include in that a request to look at truck access on the eastern part of Red Hook, including the possibility of remapping Halleck Street as an alternative to Bay Street, which is a current truck route there.
Great. I know there are some people that have comments on this, so can we just keep it orderly? Who wants to speak first?
I see that Paul Basile has his hand up. Paul, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, Paul.
Okay, thanks everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, so I hate to feel like every time a truck issue comes up that I come out on these things and I'm like the big bag truck guy. But I'm really trying to come at this discussion looking for a reasonable alternative to solve existing problems. And I would just make a few points, and if they ramble, don't hold it against my support for street safety needs and finding common ground. You know, I'm really trying to work with thoughtful groups like Resilient Red Hook and others. Having said that, I'm interested to hear how demapping makes this a safer issue for Red Hook, especially specifically Van Brunt, without a alternative that's readily available. I know that Jerry mentioned the port and Eric mentioned the port access, but if that's not available, I just feel that it's premature to demap a truck route, which has historically been a tool for truck drivers and others using the street to know what they're up against in a mixed-use community like Red Hook. And words in the proposal, such as incompatible or compatible, I mean, those are debatable. It is an IBZ, it is an industrial area. So, I mean, what's the definition of incompatible at this point? I know there's a lot of things happening on Van Brunt and in Red Hook, but unless we have a discussion on the studies and alternatives that the city is readily able to make available, demapping it just seems like it's a premature and dangerous route to take as a community board, because there are people who are going to rely on that map to know how to navigate Red Hook currently. And so I think it's a bit premature and dangerous if people rely on that map. It was brought up before about enforcing truck rules and weight limits and idling laws. Those are all tools that we can use to keep trucks in line, speed limits. I think that we can look at other ways of minimizing the issues that residents are having in Red Hook without causing more confusion and trucks perhaps navigating through other streets that are really not meant for trucks. Vision Zero is mentioned, and I think that we as a community board have every right to demand this study be done on a timely manner, and that resources be given to the community, given this increase that's coming our way with UPS and Amazon and others. But I think that's a reasonable request, and that's Vision Zero's obligation to give us as a community. It's been a long time truck route, so I think that most people in Red Hook know the issues that we face as businesses already. And so I think that given the challenges that we face as businesses already, I think demapping is just not a way for us as businesses and truck drivers to be able to better help make the community a safer place. There are a few more points, but you basically got the idea of why I think demapping is premature, and I would love to hear more about why Red Hook, Resilient Red Hook, and others feel that demapping is a first step rather than a consequence of any study that gives us recommendations and solutions. And thank you for letting me speak. I appreciate it.
Sure. Mark, you had some comments to make?
Yes, I basically agree with Paul. There needs to be a study before you demap. I support the goals of the Red Hook Initiative. I think that should be considered with regard to any study that we do, that is done. But I don't believe you should demap until there is a study that shows there are other and appropriate ways for truck traffic to get through the area. And if the language I supplied to Eric earlier today isn't made part of the resolution, then I will vote no.
Well, could I, point of information?
Sure.
Can we, Eric, can you read the actual motion from the community board? Because I think that's, if I'm not mistaken, we in the meeting, and I know I was one of the ones who was speaking about this, is that we shouldn't demap before we have an alternative. So is the alternative not part of the motion?
So Leroy, to that point, and I wanted to respond. We have already made the request for the truck study to DOT, and the motion included these alternative proposals, and Resilient Red Hook has put forth alternative route proposals, because we would not want, and we know DOT would not demap Van Brunt Street without having an alternative, especially for the west side of Red Hook and the waterfront. So that's why the motion was written the way it is, and I will read it right now. It is Brooklyn Community Board 6 endorses Resilient Red Hook's request for a letter of support to NYC DOT, asking that Van Brunt Street be delisted as a truck route, and the letter will present alternative proposals for truck access to future last mile warehouse facilities, including, for example, our past motion requesting truck access through the container port from Hamilton Avenue, as well as an exploration of truck route alternatives on the eastern end of Red Hook, such as the potential remapping of Halleck Street as an alternative to the current truck route on Bay Street. So I don't foresee any possibility of DOT demapping Van Brunt as a truck route without mapping alternative truck routes in its place. And I do think this allows us to try to push DOT a little bit on the need for a comprehensive truck study for Red Hook, which has to be done given the amount of last mile warehouse development that's in process and in the future going to happen there.
I agree
Tamara,
with
you had
everything.
comments?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, yeah. Thanks so much for everybody who's spoken on this. I definitely agree, obviously, that I live on as a Van Brunt resident. I definitely think that this is a good idea, but I also want to make sure that I would like to make a motion actually to add to the resolution that we would like to make sure that those alternatives do not include Columbia Street or Richard Street or other streets that go by NYCHA housing. I don't want to just be pushing this this problem further east. And so I would like to make sure that that's included in the proposal. I also want to highlight that as part of the community needs, we did request that trucking study specifically because of these new last mile facilities. But yeah, to reiterate, I would like to move to include that we do not support moving that truck route to certain other streets that are also in residential areas.
We accept that as a friendly amendment. Do we have to vote on it? What exactly do we have to do?
Jerry was the motion maker, so he could accept that as a friendly if he wanted to. He also had his hand up. I think a couple other folks did as well.
Jerry, you have to unmute. Jerry, you have to unmute.
Still muted, Jerry.
Sorry about that. I clicked on it and it didn't seem to work. Couple things, and I'll answer I guess I'll answer the first question first. I'll accept the amendment. I just want to say about the going through the container port. The original motion was not to go through the container port, was to open up the container port and continue Conover Street as it runs all the way from where it is right now at the fence at Conover Street to create a real street inside the container port and let the trucks go there, thus eliminating them from Van Brunt Street. So I think we have to be careful to make sure it's not running through the container port. It's an extension of Conover Street through the container port, which is what the original motion was.
We'll note that wording. Thank you.
And
I think
I just want to add one thing. As some of us who've been around long enough know, that even if you take Van Brunt Street off the truck route, the regulations will allow truckers to still continue using the street as to go down on them. Because once they're off a truck route and the destination they're going to is not on a truck route, they are allowed to take the most direct street to get to that location. So taking it off of the official truck route will, yes, diminish the amount of trucks on it, but it won't eliminate them. But the opening of Conover Street or the extension of Conover Street through the container port all the way to Hamilton Avenue will do wonders for getting trucks off Van Brunt because they don't want to use it if there's a street that is as wide as the container port will allow and go directly to what will be the UPS facility. It will also stop trucks coming in on the east side of Red Hook who want to get to the west side coming across. If we can get Conover Street and the Port Authority to do what they should have done when the container port was first opened years ago. So I think it's important that we eliminate the trucks from Van Brunt Street, but we make sure that we provide that alternative that will function not now, but now and in the future, and I don't know how many years, long after I'm serving on the board, it'll work. That's it.
Victoria, you had some comments?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I just want to reiterate that to Paul, that this move is not going to get trucks totally off of Van Brunt Street. And it's been a daily, cars daily get nicked, bumped, totally run over by trucks on Van Brunt Street because they're just going that way. And I want to say that Jerry's point about opening up Conover Street is the way to go. So, and we do need a truck study, especially with the amount of trucks coming to Red Hook. So we're not doing anything without DOT coming and looking and studying and understanding what's really going on here. And there has been studies. Alex Washburn, part of Resilient Red Hook, has done a sound study to study the amount of reverberation that trucks are making up and down Van Brunt Street to show the kind of traffic that is happening from the large trucks coming down Van Brunt Street on a daily basis.
Hildegard, I understand you had some comments, plus Eric said you might be able to share your screen to show us something.
So we have a map. I have to step away fairly quickly. So I'm going to share my screen. I can't. Oh, gotta help me out here.
Mike or Ty, you need to enable.
Yeah, I'll give you share screen privileges just a second.
Okay, ready?
Yes.
Okay, so here is a map of our proposed truck routes. Trucks going to the new UPS facility will take full advantage of the port, and trucks coming to the new Goldman Sachs facility will enter Red Hook this way. And in that way, not involving Van Brunt Street at all. This particular truck route is moved far away from public housing, which is great. And the majority of trucks will be coming in between the hours of 2 and 7 in the morning when there's very little traffic on the arterial roads. So it's important to make sure that they are far away from residential structures. With that in mind, Eric, I'm going to ask you to take over, and I am going to return to my primary responsibility.
Thanks, Hildegard.
Great. Bob, I think you had a question.
Yes. Just a reminder, when we asked for 9th Street to be relooked at when the routes came on, and I don't want to really change the topic, but we were told by the politicians that we'll get to that, and that what we really need in Brooklyn is a comprehensive truck route study. It seems like we're doing these things in piecemeal, a little bit of time. I'm looking at the routes that you've got picked out now that end up going up Smith Street and stopping at the highway, and what's preventing trucks then to just keep going 2 more blocks and going up 9th Street, which what happens to all the trucks, the sanitation trucks coming from that spot right there, or the asphalt trucks coming right there. We need to be looking at this at a much larger point of picture. And I'm not going to say no to what you're saying here, but I think it has to be put into the motion as should be part of a larger truck route for the borough. I think that's an important issue. If we don't say that, then I would be all against it. I'm not looking for you to now take time to do specifics, but I think it has to be more back up.
If you're not speaking, can I ask you to please mute because we're getting a little feedback from some people. Any other comments besides Bob's?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I was also agreeing with the point that you have to look at it as a whole neighborhood, and that you don't want all of the trucks to be coming off of down onto West 9th Street or down into Carroll Gardens. You want them to sort of be routed so that they will stay away from all of the residential neighborhoods.
Great. Thank you, Judith. Anybody else?
Can I make just one more point?
Sure.
So I think that we have Jerry's point with Conover and again, Hildegard and Victoria's points being all taken into consideration and all valid points and considerably good alternatives. I just think that demapping creates a dangerous situation for the truck drivers, the cyclists, and others who are not familiar with the area and rely on the map to give them the best route that is currently available. And demapping it, I am afraid, is going to cause more confusion and dangerous situations in the short term before we push for that Conover solution or other feasible, available alternatives. Thank you.
If I could say, Peter,
Yeah.
if I could say this, it won't be demapped unless there's an alternative route that's done. I'm telling you, Paul, it's not going to be demapped unless an alternative route is done.
I was going to say, if we can soften our language so that we say consider demapping or something along those lines, or not make demapping the first sentence in there and say we want this study and one of the things we'd like you to seriously consider doing is demapping if an alternative comes up. So if we can modify that language, I think that would be the solution that would please most of the people that were objecting.
I think it was very clear at the committee that we understood that we had to provide an alternative and that you cannot just demap Van Brunt Street without an alternative being presented, being accepted. And as I pointed out earlier, even if it is demapped, the trucks can still use it. So I think that if we pass this and approve it, what we're asking for is that the city and the Port Authority work together to, one, open up Conover Street, and then we can talk about the demapping. You can't demap without a replacement. Leroy's absolutely correct.
Is that what it says though in the thing there? Because I'm not seeing that.
I think
in the proposal or the resolution.
Eric's presentation was very clear that that's part of it. That you have to consider something before you eliminate something, you have to find a replacement. And it has to be approved. It has to be built.
Right. Okay.
So, again, if we can just make sure that the motion doesn't start out by saying we want you to demap this, that we want you to do these things, and our goal is that you will demap it, assuming that all other things line up. So if we can pledge ourselves to that kind of wording, I think we have a greater chance of success.
Peter, if I could just interject, this motion is in support of us sending a letter in support of Resilient Red Hook's idea. So since it will just be a letter, I think for the sake of not having to rework the motion, we could just address that in the letter itself, if that sounds right to you.
Sure, it does. It sounds fine. Bob?
Yeah, I mentioned the fact of needing a larger look at the truck routes. If we don't say anything about it, of keeping the trucks out of the residential areas that border Red Hook, then I can't support it. And I don't think we should do it. I mean, it just wants some general wording in there that says that we have to do that, whether it's Smith Street, West 9th, or just Hamilton Avenue coming up and making a right or left. But to just stop there isn't right.
DOT, and Leroy, correct me if I'm wrong, DOT expects to release their citywide smart freight management plan before the end of the year, which would address the entire city.
It will address the entire city. We're hoping to get that out before the end of the year.
I've heard that before, but thank you. Okay.
Anyway, I know there are some people that are still against this, so I'll ask that, Mark has already posted that he's still against it. So if there's anybody else that wants to vote against it, if you could post that in the chat, we'll take that into account.
Can you clarify again? So we're voting to support what Resilient Red Hook said, not what we were
No, we're voting. We're voting to send a letter in support of it, with the acknowledgement that we're going to word it in a way that doesn't mention demapping as the first thing out of our mouths. That we're going to say we support them to do all of these things with the goal of demapping, but not suggesting that demapping is the primary goal of what we're trying to do here.
Not in lieu of an alternate route.
Right. So we're writing a letter of support for what Resilient Red Hook is trying to do. And I will look at the letter, to make sure that it does all of those things. So again, Bob is abstaining, Mark is against, Paul is against. Anyone else?
I'm against it. I agree with Bob and Mark.
Okay, Judith is against as well.
Leroy's abstaining.
Leroy is abstaining. Ariel is abstaining. Rick, I think, said was against.
And Karen.
And Karen.
Peter, just make sure
Yes.
just make sure Leroy's abstention is recorded as for cause. And
yes. Okay, thank you all very much for that. We'll again, and I'll make sure that Mike shares the letter with me so that I can make sure that the language is appropriate to the sentiments that were expressed here. We didn't have anyone sign up for community sessions, so we're going to hear from representatives of elected officials, and we're going to start with Megan from Brad Lander's office.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Megan Flynn. I'm the Director of Constituent Services and Community Affairs for Councilmember Lander. So obviously, I'm really feeling for public school parents and another imminent closure and an indefinite closure of schools, and we're working, with the schools in our district, and if any parents are having any troubles or having any questions, they can reach out to me or my colleague Laura, who works on all our school issues, and we'll do our best to help you out. We're hearing in regards to COVID tests that there are really long lines at city MDs throughout the district. We're still hearing good things about New York City Health and Hospital sites, and you can get an appointment online, and I will post all that information in the chat about how to book an appointment online and where the closest sites are. The Voter Assistance Advisory Committee of the New York City Finance Board is holding a virtual hearing to get feedback on early absentee voting and election day voting. So if you had any issues or you were a part of the group of people who received an incorrect ballot, that you can testify to the Campaign Finance Board, and I will post the registration link in the chat. With more closures imminent as the COVID rates go up, we're still trying to work to support our small businesses. We're working on a recovery lease legislation with our colleagues at the state, and hoping that when they come back into session, they give us authorization to pass our bill, at the council. Grab and go meals continue, as Anita mentioned. Students and families can go get to any school building between 9 a.m. and noon on weekdays to pick up 3 free grab and go meals from 3 to 5 p.m. And New Yorkers of all ages can go and pick up meals at 260 community meals were served sites around the city, and I will post those in the chat as well. If you're interested in staying local this year for the holiday and not traveling, we will be putting together some resources to volunteer or to donate food, canned goods or frozen turkeys to people in need, or to CHIPS right here in Park Slope. And I hope you all have a lovely Thanksgiving and stay safe and stay healthy.
Taika from Scott Stringer's office.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello?
Somebody else needs to mute, please. We're hearing you and not hearing Taika. Go ahead.
Well, hi, everyone. My name is Ty Karaguchi. For those of you who don't know me yet, I am the Brooklyn Borough Liaison for Comptroller Stringer. Just a few quick announcements. Firstly, Comptroller Stringer and A Better Balance launched a new work and family survey to inform and improve critical workplace protections, accommodations, and flexibility for working New Yorkers. As schools face extended closures and many businesses have either shuttered or shifted to remote work, the survey will analyze how New Yorkers' relationships to work and family have changed amid the pandemic in order to help identify future policy recommendations during this crisis and beyond. So if there's any interest from folks on this call to participate in our survey, I will drop the links in the chat. The survey is also available in Spanish. Secondly, the comptroller announced his support for the New York Taxi Workers Alliance proposal for medallion debt relief. This proposal addresses the taxi medallion crisis that has led to widespread financial devastation among drivers whose medallions values plummeted and has resulted in the deaths of 9 workers in one 12-month period. The plan calls on lenders to write down outstanding loans to a maximum of $125,000, allowing medallion owners to repay loans on terms they can afford with current earnings. So under the agreement, the city would act as a backstop for medallion loans held by individual owners. After reviewing the proposal, the comptroller's office has concluded that it offers a comprehensive risk management approach that could reduce further future liability and costs for taxpayers. A statement from the comptroller: predatory lenders took drivers for a ride and left families in a wreckage of financial distress and despair. We have a fiscal and moral obligation to make this right, and embracing this plan is the right start. So I will also drop the link to this report in the chat. And finally, the comptroller urged the city to act immediately to close the digital divide and to provide all New York City students with the internet access they need to participate in remote learning and realize their right to a free and public education amid today's COVID-19 pandemic. The comptroller urged the city to solve this divide that leaves over 100,000 students who live in approximately 40,000 households without internet and 77,000 students that lack Wi-Fi enabled devices. A statement from the comptroller reads that there's no reason why now, more than 7 months into the crisis, the city still has no comprehensive plan for addressing these challenges. Without immediate action, these students will fall further behind in their coursework and find themselves at an even deeper educational disadvantage. And we simply cannot allow this to happen. The comptroller's plan is that the city should offer subsidized and redeemable internet passports for low-income families to purchase broadband service from providers in the areas. The comptroller outlined solutions to these challenges, recommending that the city convene all of the internet service providers as well and carriers operating in the 5 boroughs to discuss all possible options to quickly provide affordable and reliable internet to every student in the city who lacks a high-speed broadband connection. And I will drop the link to our report in the chat as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Wiley from Nydia Velasquez's office.
All right, thanks. I think I'm off mute. So it's been busy, obviously. Happy to see hopefully some regime change and a new administration so we can move on the HEROES Act to get funding where we need it for local municipalities and states, as well as MTA and everything else. Also, Congresswoman Velasquez, of course, has Red Hook in her district, and want to send her best wishes to the victim, 17-year-old, of a shooting. He was in critical condition, but had surgeries and is recuperating. But this happened in Red Hook houses on Columbia Street, and we're working to try to get help for the family. And at this point, the police don't have a lead on the shooter. Also, we were with the commissioner and also Eric McClure for the opening of the completed 4th Avenue protected bike lane on 4th Avenue, going north from First up to Flatbush Avenue, and also another one they got going up from Empire Boulevard up to Grand Army Plaza. I did use the opportunity to discuss one-on-one while the commissioner was having her bike tire flat fixed, to chat a bit about the truck route issue and last mile delivery onslaught that we're seeing in Red Hook, with actually 5 last mile delivery logistics centers being proposed at lease space. From UPS was the earlier one, now Amazon, Dove Hertz, also on Columbia Street. That's what I have as a picture behind me, where you can see near Red Hook ball fields. The commissioner was gracious enough. Leroy was there too. We did do a meeting, including with Councilman Bradlander and Carlos Menchaca, to discuss the resolution from the Red Hook community and also the interest of the community board. I just wanted to highlight that in that meeting, we highlighted the fact that UPS had agreed to study truck routes as a good neighbor gesture to help fund it. And we're looking for a DOT interest in collaborating on that. Some of the things, though, to bear in mind is that Van Brunt is really the main north-south thoroughfare, and to replace it requires having 2 streets designated truck route, since they're one-way streets. The other thing is, as we learned from the light rail feasibility study the Congressman got funding for in 2010, 10 years ago, we didn't get a trolley, but we did learn some things. And so turn radii is another big concern when it comes to where you could move a truck route. So getting over there is an issue. But that all points up the fact that we would like to see a study. And now that Amazon is showing up and these other ones, we're reaching out to see if they wouldn't help fund such a study as a good gesture. The other issues in Red Hook, we did have a town hall meeting with Red Hook houses on the soil, since there was lead contamination found in the ball fields. They had done testing in Red Hook houses, which is having resiliency upgrades in construction. And so we had a good meeting with EPA and NYCHA on what their safety protocols are for protecting the community against further lead contamination, since they're excavating so much and putting all that new infrastructure in to be more resilient. So there was also interest, the Congressman was interested in seeing if the Red Hook community wouldn't have a community advisory group, much like the Gowanus Canal has a community advisory group, since this construction has a lot of impacts. So we're interested in anyone who's interested in being part of a regular group like Gowanus has for Red Hook houses and that resiliency reconstruction, in helping to facilitate that and talk about what that would look like. Also, of course, there are gas outages in Red Hook, Gowanus, and Wyckoff. And so we're also concerned in the holiday season that people who have limited mobility are able to get meals. Of course, Gowanus dredging kicked off on Monday, and was glad to be there with a number of people from the community board and the CAG. After 10 years of CAG existence, the CAG has turned 10 years old, and Gowanus in the main channel has started. EPA is 50 years old. The Superfund site is 40 years old. I've been at this for 20 years with the Congresswoman when we did the first cruise up the canal to try to get attention to cleaning it up with Buddy Scotto and others. And this week was the first day of full dredging. So congratulations to everybody. I also want to make a shout out to a business, Annie Cottrell of Annie's Blue Ribbon General Store in Park Slope on 5th Avenue and President Street, is going to be a witness in the Congresswoman's Financial Services Subcommittee on Housing, Community Development, and Insurance. That subcommittee on housing includes insurance, and the topic is ensuring against a pandemic, challenges and solutions for policyholders and insurers, because a lot of people who bought business interruption insurance found out that the business interruption from a pandemic isn't covered. And Ann Cottrell from Park Slope is going to be testifying tomorrow at 10 a.m. if anyone wants to view that. I welcome you. And with that, I probably am over my time, so I yield the balance. Thanks.
Thank you. Matt from Zellner Myrie's office.
Hi, everyone. Just a couple of updates here from Senator Myrie's office. Our office remains open by appointment only for constituent services over on Nostrand Avenue in Lenox. I dropped the link in the chat for those of you who are constituents who would like to make an appointment for very limited one-on-one constituent services. Echoing some of the concerns we had earlier about traffic safety, the senator wrote an op-ed last week for Streets Blog about traffic safety along 3rd Avenue, a little bit further south than CB6, but nonetheless. Also wanted to let everyone know about Senator Myrie's small business survey. We are conducting a survey of small businesses in the district to understand the challenges they have faced during the COVID-19 pandemic, and are hosting a town hall on December 10th that you can RSVP for. I've dropped a link to the survey and the RSVP in the chat as well. Sharing the concerns of everybody about the announcement today on schools. We are in touch with leadership in District 15 and other places to kind of understand more about the plan there. Otherwise, that is our report. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody that I missed? I apologize. If so, if there's anybody that I missed, please speak up. Okay, hearing none. Is there any new business that anyone needs to discuss? Again, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And thank you, Jerry. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Please stay safe. Please wear your mask and protect yourselves and your neighbors, and we'll get out of this. And
one thing, Peter, thank you to Ann, thank you to Angelica and of course Ty for helping host throughout the meeting and the muting and all that stuff. So thank you, and in the spirit of Thanksgiving. So thanks.
And a happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Take it easy, guys.
Stay safe, everyone, please.